Hi, I'm MC Keegan-Ayer from the Frederick County Council of Frederick County, Maryland. I'd like to welcome you to the Maryland Association of Counties Conduit Street podcast, featuring in-depth interviews and discussions with state and county leaders on the issues and policies that affect us all.
Welcome back to the Conduit Street podcast. I am your host, once again, Michael Sanderson from the Maryland Association of Counties. Delighted to be back behind the microphone and with a special guest once again. Cathy Muse, our friend from the NACo EDGE program, the National Association of Counties program that provides cost-saving and efficiency tools for member counties across the country. She joined us on this podcast about a year ago, and we had a pretty good conversation about procurement offerings through the National Association. Cathy's back with us again, and we are excited to have her. Cathy, thanks for joining Conduit Street.
Thank you so much for having me back. I can't believe it's already been a year, and I'm super happy to be back. Thanks.
Oh, happy to have you here, especially because there's some new stuff to talk about on this front. And we're in springtime. And while folks around our neck of the woods are thinking about cherry blossoms and the end of our state's legislative session and things of that nature, it's also budget time. It's also time that our member jurisdictions are doing a lot of planning and preparing for the year ahead. And not a bad time to be thinking about the tools and options that our two organizations constantly work to provide for our member counties. So some of you know our state association, NACo, the Maryland Association of Counties, and many of you know the National Association of Counties, NACo. And sometimes the first things that will come to your mind are advocacy on behalf of our member jurisdictions, that NACo has been really great leading the charge and voicing concerns about counties, whether it's about flood insurance or whether it's about disaster preparation or resiliency or managing federal funds through the pandemic and so forth. NACo's been a great voice for us. NACo tries to do the same thing on behalf of our member counties through the legislative process and with the budget and all those sorts of things. People are familiar with our conferences and events. We're excited that the NACo annual conference is going to be in Philadelphia. And I think we're going to have a big Maryland contingent make it up to Philadelphia. I'm excited about that. Our association always does our big event in Ocean City in August. We're in Cambridge, Maryland in December or January with a winter event. So people think of those things as what our associations do, but 24/7, we're working on services that can help our members. And I want to get into some of that. Procurement doesn't sound like the sexiest topic, but actually, like, this is pretty good stuff. And you and I are both proud of what NACo and MACo are trying to bring for our members. So let's dig into that a little bit. Cathy, tell us for a second, remind our members where you've come from and got into this role with the NACo procurement program, but your background's not too far from us.
Well, that's true. And my background is right here in Maryland. I grew up in Kensington, Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C., and attended Montgomery County Public Schools. And I received both my undergraduate and graduate degrees from the University of Maryland. So I am a proud person that identifies as a Marylander.
Love it.
And I also, years after graduating, worked at the University of Maryland College Park campus, managing their procurement office at the physical plant, which is really how I got a real taste for doing local procurement versus, I had started at the federal level where I felt a little disconnected from my procurement activities. All of that prepared me to serve as the chief purchasing officer in Fairfax County, Virginia, from which I retired in 2022 and joined NACo to see how we could help county procurement officers around the country.
Okay. Yeah, so the idea of cooperative procurement has been something that the National Association has been in for a long time. Then there was a pause as one program sort of got bought out of the National Association of Counties. We had another player came in. Things got a little complicated for a while. But I think NACo correctly read the room saying there's still an opportunity for someone whose focus is on public entities to maybe play a different space than just a regular old bundler or sleeve of whoever's out there selling stuff. And so I'm grateful that NACo is back in this business, and our state association very much on board with this program. So give us the nuts and bolts, especially for someone who's not a procurement guru like yourself. Public procurement, and where an entity like the Public Promise Procurement Program through NACo can be helpful if you're a county buyer or county department head.
Great question, Michael, and also great little nutshell history, because cooperative purchasing is nothing new to NACo, nor to MACo or its members. And I won't go back into ancient history, but 30 plus years ago, worked with the local jurisdictions cooperatively to bring together our procurement power way back then. And now we're super excited. Like you said, we had a procurement advisory committee assembled to help us determine how best we could help procurement officials and whether there was room in that cooperative space, which had greatly proliferated during that pause period you talked about, whether there was space. And you're absolutely right. The committee said yes, the membership said yes, and they continue to inform us as to what we do. And we're super excited about the momentum that Public Promise Procurement is gaining with counties, powered by NACo. It leverages the formidable aggregate purchasing power of counties around the country to offer really strong, resilient, competitively bid contracts that are with high quality suppliers offering innovative solutions that counties need pretty much every day. Right now, we just have we have 4 solid contracts. Our most recently awarded contract is for recruiting and staffing solutions. So this is to help counties both recruit key positions from the executive suite to line personnel, but also to help them develop recruitment strategies, do civil service reform, all kinds of activities around staffing solutions. It is not a staffing contract, if you will. It is not a staff augmentation or temporary staffing contract. It's all about recruiting, filling, and then retaining that staff. We also have a relatively new contract for rentals. It's pretty much everything rentals. And it's with the world's largest rental company, United Rentals, which has branches all over Maryland, as well as all over the country. They offer everything from earth-moving equipment and tools for your job sites to a fancy white cover over a chair at a gala. So if you think this is something I need to rent for any purpose at all, think United Rentals. We asked them to come to the table with a very broad, deep offering, and they have done exactly that.
So both of those instances to me sound like the system working the way we want, right? You form the advisory committee, and this is populated by people from different local jurisdictions and counties across the country. It's their professionals in procurement or in finance or wherever, but they're the ones speaking and saying, what we really need right now, we have staffing shortages, and many of our jurisdictions, particularly many of our smaller jurisdictions, don't have the in-house capacity to do a full campaign, but they need a good IT director. One of these positions that's becoming increasingly competitive, and it's a hot market for people with those skills. So how does your county with a population of 60,000 get the expertise to bring aboard the right person to manage that side of the shop? We really wish we had an ally who could come in and do this kind of stuff with us. And now here's NACo saying, we've arranged for a soup to nuts partnership on recruiting and finding the talent that you need with a public sector angle, so that maybe you don't need to hire you don't need to hire somebody in-house with those skills. You just farm this out on a pre-existing contract, and boom, they can help you get that done, rather than feeling like you're just lost without the in-house expertise.
Absolutely, and everything in between. I love that you asked it that way or talked about it that way, because the contract has a spectrum of offerings. So if you need that full suite, in other words, you want to outsource it completely and have the company do everything for you, they can do it all. They can also do little pieces of the process for you. So if all you want them to do is advertise and vet initial candidates and then hand you a package, they can do that. If you want them to do the second step, vet the initial package, do initial interviews, and give you a short list, they can do that. They have a whole suite of offerings that are priced in a way that make them accessible to every single jurisdiction. I mean, from the smallest town to the largest county in the country.
All right. So I guess I want to make a comment about the United Rentals as well, because that also seems like a good fit for a public sector environment. I mean, I'm sure we have, among the NACo membership with the 3,000 or so jurisdictions across the country who are part of NACo or county governments in one form or another in all the various states. We have tiny jurisdictions and gigantic ones. We got Los Angeles County is a mammoth, bigger than many, many states. And there are, tiny counties with hundreds rather than tens of thousands of people, right? But along that whole gamut, maybe the largest jurisdictions need to have a fleet of construction vehicles so that they can go out and do routine maintenance on roadways or bridges that they're responsible for. But not everybody has the need to have that in the garage all year long. But you still might have a public works project where for the next 75 days we need to work on this project. What we'd really like to have is a Bobcat on site to help us with that. But we don't really want to be in the let's buy a Bobcat for the occasional project. So that's exactly where having a plug and play rental solution, let's get the three pieces of equipment and use them for as long as we need, but not carry them on our books because in 18 months we might have one more need for them, right?
That's a great description of what United Rentals can offer, everything in between. So if you don't even know what you need, they can help you assess what you might need at your job site and for how long you'll need it. They can also, if you have a fleet and you're not sure whether it's effectively utilized, they can help you evaluate the utilization of your fleet and where you might want to rent, lease, or buy versus the other.
Right.
So they also can help you track utilization of the equipment you rent from them or track utilization of your own equipment. They can offer maintenance for your existing fleet or for a fleet that you rent or lease from them. The contract has options that we hope will meet the needs of, like you said, the very largest of jurisdictions down to the very smallest of requirements. When we went out looking at rental equipment and how counties use rental equipment, we found that pretty much every county we talked to was using one of the big three, if you will, rental companies.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really informed how we went to market. We also found that counties supplemented those big three with lots of local suppliers who offer things like canopies and porta potties and other rental equipment. And United Rentals will partner and has partnered with community-based organizations to offer things like fencing and things that were not in their wheelhouse, but we wanted them to be a one-stop shop for. So we're really excited about how United Rentals is located in all these communities, but also willing to work with suppliers in those communities.
All right. So that's a good link back to local suppliers, which sometimes is a desired outcome for I think our local purchasers as well. And this way you might be able to get the efficiency of a large contract, but still have a local impact that has local political community benefits and so forth. And sometimes there's a local accountability there too. Having the nearby contractor come by then do the fencing, they've got a sort of backyard accountability because they're right here and they'd like to have a good reputation with you for the next job, right?
That's right. And United Rentals is branch based. So that branch is a community branch and they're already, ingrained in the community. They live and work in the community. So that model works so well with public jurisdictions around the country because even though they're the world's largest rental company, they feel like your neighborhood rental company.
Right. So I want to take this in a slightly different direction and kind of get one click nerdier, which probably won't bother neither you nor me, nor most of our listeners. In all candor, the kind of folks who listen to this podcast are interested in public policy and politics and state and local government and that sort of stuff. But I want to talk about the nature of cooperative procurement and cooperative purchasing, because I think it's an interesting model. I think government gets a bad rap, sometimes a deserved bad rap, for being inefficient and clumsy and slow. And there's always, I think, forgive me, but there's always a tension between sort of efficiency and accountability. And I think it's a perpetual issue in the public sector. Well, you want to have accountability and oversight and make sure people are following the rules. And we don't want to have people abusing the public trust. And, now my nephew got the big contract. So you want to have a whole process to avoid that sort of thing. At the same time, when you have a lot of process and a lot of audits and a lot of boxes to check and a lot of forms to fill and committees to clear and so forth, people get frustrated. It's like, we just needed to go fill that pothole. Why is this 7 weeks and we still don't have the papers processed, right? And government gets some heat on both ends of that. One of the tools, I'm sure Maryland's not unique here, but it might be common in lots of states. In Maryland, when a public entity decides we're going to go to the market for certain requirements, we want a landscaping contract for all the buildings and grounds that our county or our school system owns or something like that. You get bidders, you go through a public process and you pick the low bidder or the best bidder, or you go through some sort of publicly accountable process and you pick a winner. In Maryland, the default is that those contracts will have a ride-on clause. So if a county like Howard County in the middle of the state of Maryland hires a new vendor who's going to do landscaping and grounds services on all these different buildings in Howard County, they write that county so that Carroll County right next door could look at that contract and say, actually, that's a nearby company and they've been working with Howard County for the last 2 years and it's working fine. Let's see if they'd be amenable to extending the Howard County contract into Carroll County next door, and that local supplier can actually meet our needs as well. So cooperative purchasing on the small scale, you look what your neighbor's doing. It's like, the neighbor kid mowed somebody else's lawns. He seemed to do a nice enough job. So you tell him, hey, $20, come over and do mine, right? This is the same concept, just written a little larger at the public entity level. So that's been around forever. I'm sure you did that sort of thing small scale when you were in Virginia or with College Park, right?
Yep, absolutely. And what we do harnesses that at a larger level. The clause or the language that Maryland jurisdictions include that allows a neighboring jurisdiction, or one across the state for that matter, to jump on and utilize that contract is super valuable. But that contract, particularly with that local supplier, can be priced appropriately for everybody to use just based on the fact that it's a small local supplier. Mm-hmm. However, what we do at a larger scale is we literally harness the purchasing power of those two jurisdictions plus all the others around the country and advertise that opportunity as a national co-op opportunity. So attract a lot of competition and also drive the prices down, because the opportunity is so big. And at some point, big is big, right? But mm-hmm. the opportunity is so big that you can demand the very lowest of prices. And, I think one of the things that we haven't talked about, or if I mentioned it, is that NACo and MACo are nonprofit member organizations, right? So our commitment is to our membership. And so we have a different mission, if you will, and a different driving factor. We want to do good stewardship for our taxpayers. We want to meet the requirements of our membership and what they're asking us to do and help them with and support them with. But we also want to do it at the best possible value to remain stewards, and to do it with the best possible process so that we are we can get a clean audit, that we can be applicable in every public jurisdiction because we've met those competitive requirements, and they can be confident that it's a transparent, publicly run process that they can depend on from a nonprofit organization who's not answering to investors or trying to increase a profit share, but is trying to be responsive to taxpayers. So it's I think it's a perfect formula, and it also has the right mission behind it.
Right. Well, I think you connected a bunch of the dots there really, really well. So the idea of looking at what your neighbor's doing and riding on their contract has been around for a long time, and you just take that concept and open your mind that maybe the contract that's best to ride on these large scale kind of universal service needs, like rentals, like the need for Maricopa County or Cook County, Illinois, or Montgomery County, Maryland, to occasionally, rent out some heavy equipment that they would only need for a little while, is close to universal. Even if it's delivered through a national network and so forth, the idea of one lead agency who goes through a big public process and picks a winner, and then on behalf of other jurisdictions can say, we negotiated the price down because the promise of this contract was always going to be a big one. It wasn't just for our one city or our one county. We've got all these public entities saying we'll be the lead, and then everybody benefits from, economies of scale, if nothing else.
Exactly. It is. And also they benefit from the sophistication and rigorous process that lead public agency is accustomed to doing. And then with the collaboration and support of NACo Public Promise Procurement, it gets that national advertisement and exposure through publications, e-bidding sites, as well as we mentioned earlier, our advisory committee. So they're able to publicize it in each of their communities and representing some of the largest markets around the country. So it does attract those largest of large suppliers, but you'll see when you look at the WBCP contract for government recruiting, they're not a huge contractor, but they have a niche. They grew up, if you will, out of local government and saw that need, and so specialize in local government. So, it's not always the largest of the large. And although one of our contracts is with Safeware Incorporated, which is for public safety, emergency preparedness and response, and community resilience solutions. And they started, when I worked at the University of Maryland, 30-something years ago, they were our safety contractor, one of our local safety contractors. They're headquartered in Lanham, Maryland. And they've grown to be one of the most respected supporters of public safety across the country, both in emergency preparedness and response, working with emergency operations offices all over the country, but also police, fire, sheriff, in addition to being that workplace and industrial safety company that we all knew them as. So, sometimes it isn't the biggest of the big, but their partnership with NACo can help them become the biggest of the big. Sorry.
Well, that's so we'll fly the flag with a little Maryland pride that the local boy done good, and the small shop there in College Park or nearby ends up becoming the big time player who's a good fit for a national contract through this program through NACo and their allies. So
that's right.
I think it's a great success story, and happy to think of it as a local one for a Maryland company, but it's also like, that's one of the things that this can afford. If your company becomes a successful bidder for one of these national procurement contracts, you can end up getting your name in the good graces of all sorts of clients you might not have had access to before. So that's why they'll bid low, they'll bid aggressively to try and get, Loudoun County's leading this, but it's going to be on behalf of someday 50 or 150 local entities. So let's do good. Let's go out and do good work and win their contract, win their trust, and then they might find value in that relationship beyond. So you can be a win-win for the member counties, for the association, but also for the vendors who get an expansion opportunity that might not have been there just serving, the University of Maryland at College Park. That's a great client, but it doesn't necessarily get you in the door at Arizona State.
Right. It also helps the supplier offer to the counties the very best pricing they can, because they don't have to spend valuable dollars gaining that business, right? They don't have to compete in every county and respond to multiple solicitations, because they've done that once, and these other counties can utilize that and take advantage of that. So both the supplier and the public entity save money by using cooperative procurement.
And I guess I think I've made a couple allusions, and you have as well, but we in the public sector do have special rules about transparency and process in bidding and so forth. But one thing that you get when you look on the platform with the Public Promise Procurement entity through NACo, if you're a county, if you're listening to this podcast and you're in finance, you're in purchasing, and you're thinking we ought to look into this stuff, first of all, great. But second of all, what you're going to see will all the offerings through PPP will have been publicly vetted by a public lead agency using best practices that you as a county of any size can feel comfortable that they've done the legwork that you would have had to do yourself. So if you find a good fit there, you don't have a local vendor, or you're looking for a great price or something like that, if you find a good fit through the NACo EDGE program, you're gonna have a lot of boxes pre-checked for you, and that's peculiar to the public sector. Not everybody has to do this, but we all do, right?
That's right. And it's an important tenet of our program, which is that the contracts are solicited, evaluated, awarded, and administered by a lead public agency, and that the master agreement meets their requirements and the anticipated requirements of counties or public agencies around the country, and that each of our contracts is a single award, so it represents the very best value resulting from that solicitation. The public agency doesn't have to figure out which of these 3 awarded contracts is best for them. We and that lead public agency have done that work for them, and then because the lead public agency has represented it as an opportunity for themselves as well as these others, it's driven down the price, it's driven up the quality of services, and it's also broadened the scope so that because of having to anticipate the needs of everyone around the country, it's got a very deep scope. So it's a tool in your toolbox that you can use for one requirement or to be your go-to requirement for fulfilling the needs that you have. It's also a great way to transition and stay with a supplier that you find to be super effective, supportive, and of great value to your jurisdiction. If you have an existing contract that's expiring, you can transition to one of these existing contracts with that same supplier if they're already a favorite in your jurisdiction.
Right. And a great point you made there that I feel like I might have not have steered us to sufficiently, but the proposition here can absolutely be a la carte. And I suspect for most of our local jurisdictions it is. So the idea is not shut down your local procurement office and farm all this stuff out to NACo and they'll take care of everything, but rather peruse the menu that NACo has provided, and you may find some options on there that will save you money, save you time, and get you great service. But maybe it's just for 3 of your next 15, big contracts, but still that's great. So
it's a tool in the toolbox.
Yeah.
And I think procurement professionals and public agencies need as many tools in there as they can fit.
Right. So you've mentioned a couple of the latest offerings, so I can't help but feel like the next step is, we know that you and your colleagues in the EDGE program we're ambitious. We want to expand the footprint and find more services. Do you have a couple areas that you think we can be on the lookout for a new supplier or a new contract from EDGE coming soon?
Yes, absolutely. So right now we have on the street 2 bids. One is managed by Maricopa County, Arizona, and that's for document and content management services. So managing everything from what you produce on paper to what you post online and its life cycle in accordance with your retention schedules and its destruction and certified destruction if needed. So that solicitation is on the street. We've held a pre-proposal conference. It will be closing later this month. And so late this spring, you should see an award announcement for document and content management services. Also, right now on the street is electric vehicle charging equipment and services led by Broome County, New York. And this is everything from just the purchase of electric vehicle charging equipment to installation, operation, and maintenance of a network or a single charger. So the purpose is to electrify both public agency fleets as well as provide electric charging infrastructure for public access across the country. So we're really excited. That also had a pre-proposal conference yesterday and closes later this month. So late this spring, you should also see an announcement about electric vehicle charging equipment. And then we have a long list of things that our counties have asked us to look at. So we're working on security guard services, payable solutions, so your P card, travel card, and then many other solutions associated with card issuers. And also looking at furniture and consulting services, and of course technology, which is a beast, and trying to figure out what is the best way to address technology since it's dynamic and also vast. So stay on the lookout for all of these things as we move forward.
Right. Well, and each one, as I'm hearing you talk through them, each one sort of fits as makes sense, right? Like like public entities, we are constantly gathering files and documents, whether it's on our residents or on services or taxes or other things like that. And it is without a doubt a best practice to have a policy for how long do you retain various documents and under what schedule do you get rid of them and so forth. And if you vary from your stated practice, you end up taking on liability. It's a great idea to adopt a policy and follow it. And if having a partner in doing that is, again, kind of beyond the scope of our county only has 11,000 residents, so us having a full-time document specialist doesn't make any sense, but hey, a contract with this company who does this very well probably is the smarter way to the best end there. So again, an obvious thing for a public sector entity and probably something that bubbled up from the folks who are guiding and advising this whole process.
Exactly. It bubbled up also from the complexity that we all wrestle with the digitization and of documents, because to ensure that they've been removed from everywhere is not an easy task, even if you have a sophisticated document specialist on staff. It's just a bear to manage, and it's a great option to have a good partner as long as it's affordable. So that's what we're working on.
Right. Sounds terrific. Well, so in my duty as host, which I only occasionally am allowed to actually hold the conch shell and act as host on the podcast. Usually it's slicker and smarter people than I am. But my duty as a host then is to say, what didn't we get to? That you had some home run thing to talk about or wonderful thing to announce or whatnot. I didn't ask the right question. So anything else we ought to cover?
Well, I think I have been remiss in not saying what our website is, where everybody who's listening to this can go and find information about the contracts we talked about, the one we didn't talk about, the solicitations that are on the street, as well as those that are coming. And they can find all of the documentation associated with those and also how to contact our team. So our website is www.publicpromiseprocurement.org. And although it's an awesome tool for county procurement professionals, NACo EDGE and MACo also have a lot of equally awesome tools that we can talk about on a future podcast, I hope.
Yep. Love that idea. We will provide direct links to Public Promise Procurement in the show notes for this episode, but we also have them embedded on the Maryland Association of Counties website. So our members who are just perusing what's out there will stumble into that on their own. Cathy Muse, thanks so much for taking some time to talk with us. Our folks in Maryland really welcome the effort that the National Association of Counties is putting in to give everybody the tools they need to succeed and safe, be effective, and be smart with local services. It's a great outcome for all of us. Thanks for all that you're doing.
Absolutely my pleasure, and we look forward to serving Maryland counties. Thanks so much.
Love to hear it. That's perfect. Great place to wrap it up. Thanks to our guest, Cathy Muse. Thanks also to this week's producer, Virginia White. On behalf of the NACo team, this is Michael Sanderson saying, go ahead, fill out that review for the podcast. Give it the 5 stars. You know you want to do that. That's the way to get the word out. Subscribe to the podcast. That way you'll get every episode sent to the device of your choice. And follow us on the NACo website, social media, and the Conduit Street blog. For Cathy Muse and the NACo team, signing off for this week, this is Michael Sanderson. We will talk to you soon.